Hello everyone and welcome to Off the Cuff, where the headlines come to life, and we are going to have a candid conversation with our U.S. Attorney, Mr. Matthew Schneider. Thank you for being with us once again.
Thant you. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You're no stranger to WDHT TV, so we're happy to have you back.
Thank you.
You hit the ground running.
Yes.
And you have made a lot of impact and a lot of changes within our city and our state, and want to hear about all of those things that you've done. But
certainly,
first and foremost, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Tell us about your thoughts in regards to what's going on nationally and
Sure.
the national narrative and what our country is going through right now.
Yeah, it's a difficult time for us. As I kind of equate it to when you use technology and you send somebody an email or a text, you know what it means if you use all capital letters. That means
they're screaming at you.
Yes, you're shouting. And so I feel right now, everyone is using all capital letters all the time in their regular dialogue nationally.
True.
And when somebody uses that type of dialogue and elevates it with nasty rhetoric, the other side feels compelled to do the same. And so unfortunately, I think we're at a period right now in our country where the tensions have been heightened so much, it's difficult to find a way to come down. However, here, even though I'm with the U.S. Justice Department and I have a national base, a lot of our work is local. I mean, our job here is to protect the people of Michigan, to make sure that their civil rights are protected, to make sure that their livelihoods are protected and they're safe, and to make sure that our streets are safe as much as possible. And so through that process, we have a lot of interaction with the local leaders. And I think we're doing okay there. We're making some great progress.
Absolutely. So basically, your communication in terms of nationally is sort of like everybody else's communication. So you get to do your own thing and sort of concentrate on the localities that you're responsible for.
Sure. So we're fairly autonomous. Our office, we cover 34 counties on the east side of Michigan, and that's 6.5 million people. And it's our responsibility to make sure those people are safe. And our interactions with Washington, D.C. are often that we would like money so that we can fund
more
our
so
programs.
Logistics.
Right, exactly. And to make sure that, our priorities nationally are the same in many respects, because there's violent crime in Los Angeles, in Miami, and Chicago, but also in the Detroit area.
Sure.
So
collaboration is important.
Yes.
So you've mentioned some of the responsibilities, but what is your main focus in terms of the U.S. Attorney's Office in? Let's talk in generalities right
Sure.
now. What is the focus? What are the main things that are sort of coming across your desk lately?
So a lot of people don't even know what a U.S. attorney does.
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of a...
So yeah, what do you do?
Exactly. So we do two things. Number one is we prosecute cases in court to make sure drug trafficking, terrorism, bank robbery, violent crime. But we also work to protect civil rights and civil liberties. We have a number of cases we're working on now regarding religious institutions, and we've had these in the past where, for example, somebody wanted to build a mosque and develop a mosque in a neighborhood,
right.
And the neighborhood gets upset. Well, it's your right to build a mosque because you have certain liberties under the law.
Religious freedoms.
Right, you have religious freedoms and can't be discriminated against based on your religion. So what we have done is we've come in on the side of the mosque. This happens in other states with synagogues and churches. And we stand up for the small mosque that can't protect itself because we have vast resources in the federal government. And we have a pretty good track record on some of these cases. So that's something we're continuing to do.
So I know you talked a little bit about this in your opening, but when you talk about federal laws, which is sometimes very different in regards to state. So how do you mesh those things, and how do you know where the boundaries and borders are?
Right. Some of the crimes are the same. For example, if you rob a bank in Michigan, it can be a state crime. It could also be a federal crime. So I will work with Kim Worthy, the county prosecutor. Our staffs will figure out what's the best place to take this case. Is the defendant a violent repeat offender who should be in prison longer to protect the public? Well, maybe the federal system is better for that. Maybe if that's not the case, the state system is good for that. And then there are certain issues that only the federal government handles.
Right,
like
right,
immigration.
sort of out of your hands.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
Immigration is something that our office has to handle, and national security, terrorism cases. That's what we have to do as well. There is a state terrorism statute, but that's maybe more domestic terrorism, but we handle the crossing of the state lines in cases like that.
Is terrorism a big issue in our community?
It's a big issue in every community because the face of terrorism has changed. I mean, the profile is a lot different. I mean, right now we are seeing people who want to commit mass acts of violence that don't really fit into any profile. These are
they're creating a profile of their own.
Of their own, absolutely. But these are men, women, black, white, different races, ethnicities, and a lot of the times it's hard to predict. In fact, you know, we've had a couple cases. There was one in California where a person was very unhappy that he couldn't get a date in campus. This man didn't find women that were attracted to him, and he was mad at other men because they could get dates. So he decided to shoot people. And that is a new form of terrorism. And there's a clique or a group of people who believe that if they can't get a date, that they should commit acts of violence. Who would have thought that? It's unbelievable, but that's spreading.
Absolutely. But why do you think that is? I mean, is it more the mental health issue? Is it more the social messages? Is it more the what people are exposed to that's a little bit over the top more so than I remember?
Yes.
I mean, why do you think that is happening? I mean, we're
Sure.
looking at mass shootings.
Yes.
We've seen more so than I think ever in my lifetime in a very short period of
Yes,
time.
that's true.
And so obviously it's increasing. So why? I mean,
There's certainly a mental health component to it. There's not a doubt about that. There's also more tension in the air.
Exactly,
And there's more
yes.
copycats, right? Somebody sees
and it's okay.
somebody,
It seems to be okay.
but people think that happened, and then at the conclusion, the person wasn't prosecuted because after he killed all those people, he committed
Killed himself.
suicide, right?
And went into infamy kind of thing?
Right, and then I'll do the same thing. So they grow upon each other. In all of these cases, about 1/3 of the people kill themselves after a shooting. About 1/3 are apprehended by law enforcement, and 1/3 are killed by other people there. So it's an interesting breakdown about how that's happening. We're also seeing, though, that it's not just about guns. That's really not the case. People are using, unfortunately, knives or vehicles. We've seen vehicle attacks.
Absolutely.
That has happened.
Charleston, when he went in and
it's
killed
happened in
that
this
one
country.
woman.
It's happened in France.
Yes.
And so we have to be continuously on guard for those types of things.
Right, but you got to admit, guns are more primary than any of the other things that you mentioned.
I think that is correct. I just read a report that more people are killed with pistols than assault rifles, which was really surprising to me, because it seems like you see more assault rifles. You read about that, right? And that's what we've seen. But look, this is evolving, and in one respect, you shouldn't be using weapons for violence no matter what. You know,
sort of like common sense, but
yes,
that's
exactly.
not prevalent lately, unfortunately.
Right.
We have really been having the conversation nationally, statewide, citywide in regards to immigration and detention centers, and the whole conversation has been really, really electric.
Yes.
And putting kids in cages just doesn't seem to be a human thing to do, much less an American thing to do. So what are we doing with that, and how did we get there, and how do we resolve this, if there is any kind of resolution?
So there's a lot of national discussion and debate over that. And a lot of that has to do with the actual detention, which is something that ICE does. That's not what our office does. We handle these cases. They only come to us, not at that stage. Those are a lot of the times where people are held administratively and then they're deported or removed. Those cases come to us for prosecution only after a person typically is deported and then re-enters, usually after the commission of a felony. The person comes here, commits a felony, is deported, comes back, maybe commits another crime. that's when our office steps in.
So you're not really the immigration police kind of
No.
kind. So it goes through ICE, and then you have the second tier kind of
Right.
thing. So that's good to know and to understand. So
Right.
so in regards to the detention centers and maybe your own personal view. In regards to what's happening nationally with kids in cages and the kids disappearing and what have you. So what is your take on that? I mean,
so that's not something that we're involved
Right.
in at all. I mean, 99% of the time, if we're prosecuting somebody who's here unlawfully, the community wants the person prosecuted as well, because that person is a dangerous person. That's typically the cases that we see, and the border seizures, the border administrative holding, that's just not something that we're interacting with.
So I mean, in terms of a personal kind
Well, my
of thing.
personal views are irrelevant. I mean, I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, not to any particular person.
Okay,
right?
well, I'll give you my personal view.
Sure, I know you
Kids,
will.
Yeah, you know I will. I mean, kids in cages is a horrific scar on our communities and especially on our Constitution and on
it's
our
never
world.
something I've had to see or witness. That's not been, since it's not part of our mission, that's
Right.
not what we do. I've never actually had to see that.
But that is sad. I mean, we've seen visions and we've seen it actually happening. So I hope that we get back onto a more moral code in dealing with these things. But we'll definitely move on. And maybe I'm outside of your jurisdiction again, but there's been so much talk about the wall and the borders, and I guess my question to you would be, how much significance would that wall create in terms of keeping our country safe, and what is its worth in regards to that, and is there a worth to it?
So that does have some impact on our office, because I connect a lot of the times with my counterparts in the southern states, and and we also have a northern border here. So we see frequent drug trafficking coming across our borders. We see dangerous people coming across our borders. We see that a lot. And from the discussions I've had with people, at least on the southern border of Texas, when there is a barrier there, it prevents the bad elements from getting in. I mean, I think a lot of people agree that we're not trying to prevent decent people from entering at a port of entry and claiming asylum if they have a well-founded claim for that. My job, if we're trying to keep people safe, it's not just about people, it's also about items. We see, unfortunately, guns coming into our country from Canada or Mexico. We see drugs coming in. And we're seeing now an increase in fentanyl, which is a deadly drug.
Sure.
That's coming in through the U.S. postal system. And Postal is doing a much better job now of identifying that. But you literally have packages of fentanyl, mainly from China, that are coming from mainland China, being mailed into the United States. These drugs are going out on the street and they're killing people. I mean, they're literally deadly and they're killing people. So when I think about border security, I think not just about the physical border. I also think about the internet and the dark web and the mail service. And those are also things that we look at very carefully to keep people safe.
The world has become definitely smaller with that, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
So when you talk about asylum seekers and immigrants and that whole portfolio, tell us what the difference is and how do you become an asylum seeker and get that protection that has been offered in the past, and as an immigrant, what are the dangers that you face in this day and age coming into
Certainly.
this country?
So, I mean, everything is available on the internet in multi-different languages to find out what the process is for coming here legally. For asylum, if you have a well-founded fear of persecution in your home country, then you should enter at the port of entry and file an application for asylum.
And how prevalent are those in terms of being granted in this day and age?
I'm not certain, but I can tell you how prevalent they are about coming in. A lot of the times people come in to seek asylum, but they don't go through the port of entry. That puts them in a totally different category, because then that's when ICE will detain them for an unlawful entry. So maybe the word isn't out for people who really want to come here and seek asylum. Then go to the border station, go there and make your claim. If you come across the border unlawfully, that is a totally different thing. And I think it delays the process for legitimate folks who really want to come here and get asylum.
Absolutely, and you're right. I mean, going the legal route has always been the best way, but sometimes I believe when people are in dire straits, sometimes their functioning is not to think straight and wanting to run for their life, and so there's that fine line.
And it's especially difficult
scary
if the country you're coming from has terrible
Exactly.
conditions. Economics or gangs in El Salvador, that's not a place that people often want to live. It's really interesting to think where America is in this world. We have so many people wanting to come into the United States. They want to come here, and they're coming here legally or illegally or what have you. How many people do we have really trying to get into El Salvador, right? We don't have that because we have freedoms here and opportunity that people want. I mean, we just don't have that sort of immigration in other parts of the world. I think that says a lot about America. So going back to your first question, right? People are polarized, people are shouting in all capital letters, but people still want to come to America. They still want to come here for the freedoms that we have. And I think we should look at that as a positive, that people want to be here so much.
I, with all my heart, hope that continues, and we go on that path of keeping our civil liberties, keeping our freedoms, and keeping the reason why people want to come and immigrate into the United States.
Yes.
So you talked a little bit about anti-terrorism and the criteria, but as the U.S. Attorney's Office, what have you seen? What has been the focal point? What have you seen most of, and what is the arm that you portray to actually prosecute and identify and bring people in? I mean, what is? I know that that's probably your jurisdiction, but what
Yes.
other partners do you have in regards to that?
So we work with
And community partners. How do you create
Yes.
that trust for community partners
Absolutely.
to help?
We have had cases where we have folks who are living in this area and then move overseas in order to commit terroristic acts. We have an ongoing case of a person who moved overseas to fight for ISIS. Working with our partners in Syria, he was arrested and has been returned here for prosecution. We work constantly with our community partners. I mean, nobody here wants an ISIS fighter to,
No, absolutely not.
right? I think we can agree about that. But we can't identify who those people are unless the community comes forward. I think it's difficult for some people to do that, but this is the same problem we've had with victims of crime in general. It's hard if you're a victim of crime to come forward. It's hard to go talk to the government about what happened. It's hard to be out and put in public where people will see you. But that is really the only way that we're able to catch people who want to commit mass murders or terrorist acts, is if people come forward.
Absolutely.
And these mass shootings, in at least 75% of these cases, somebody knew ahead of time because the shooter texted or told somebody or posted something and warned people or even wrote a manifesto, which has been done. Somebody knows this ahead of time. And if you know that, you should be reporting it to local law enforcement or to the FBI or to our office so that we can take action.
So I would say that exclusively and focused on the Arab American community in this respect. I mean, they feel targeted, and there's a fear factor there, and a mistrust. So what would you say to those individuals to create that trust factor and to create that collaboration in order to feel confident and feel empowered to be a partner in all of this, if in fact, there's a possibility to do that, but not just on terrorism cases, but on cumulative issues that we face as a community. We want to have that good partnership, and they want to be able to have that communication without feeling targeted and without feeling like there's any kind of retaliation. So what would be your message in regards to trying to create more of those cohesiveness? And I know you have been, and Bridges has been an amazing vehicle to do that. But it is just talk and conversation and communication. But creating that trust factor and that lack of fear, lack of retaliation of saying say something, see something, say something kind of thing. So how do you?
Well, Bridges has been a really good group for us. I mean, that's a wonderful channel to meet with the leaders in the Arab American community and myself and my law enforcement partners, so that we get to know each other. And I spend a lot of time in our community just having lunch or getting to know folks, so that they know that we're not a bunch of three-headed monsters, right? The other thing is so much of federal law enforcement is local. It's really right here in Michigan. And all the rhetoric that we've been talking about in Washington, we solve our problems locally. We've had great discussion in Bridges regarding the airport and how Arab Americans are treated at the airport and how they feel, and the watch list and the no-fly list. We've had really good positive discussions about that, but we need to do more, and I'm very open to having those discussions and working. Letting the community know that we really don't want to tolerate abuse of civil liberties. We don't want to tolerate it when you're treated poorly at the airport, but we need to know who those people are who are treating you that way. There's a whole reporting process for doing that. And
you need time, dates, and names.
Yeah, exactly. So look, this has happened to me repeatedly. Somebody says, my cousin's uncle's brother came into the airport a year ago, and the border guard was really rude, and I think it's because of my race or my ethnicity. Well, all of these encounters are taped. And if I know who said that to you, who did that, what flight were you on, who does somebody need to be disciplined? Well, we need to take action. We got to do it now. We need to know all that information. If we don't have that information, we can't take action. I mean, we can do more training, and we do training at the airport, or the airport does on a regular basis. But we really could use details. If you feel that your rights have been violated, we want to know right away and what those details are.
And that makes a lot of sense. You can't say, 2 years ago this happened to me and expect some kind of action. But what would be the action that you would take if you had names, dates, details, individuals? What would be the action that your office would be able to take in order to create justice for this family or this individual?
Sure. So the Department of Homeland Security has a whole mechanism, and if you go on their website, there's a whole reporting process where you can file a complaint. You can do that through the website. However, look, it's filing a complaint on a website. Okay. We need people to come forward to the leaders of Bridges to say, look, I represent the community. You represent the community. We want more empowerment through Bridges. We want more community members to actually use Bridges as their avenue, so that the complaint that you file on the internet doesn't get lost, right? It doesn't go out and get lost in cyberspace. And when we can do that, I think we'll be a lot better off.
I remember at the very beginning of this process, in regards to Bridges, once you got on the no-fly list, there was no way to get off. There was no communication between the two, the different, departments, and it was very, very, very difficult to get off of that. Once your case has been, exonerated or whatever, and it was proven that you're on there falsely. So has that changed at all?
So there's a no-fly list, and then there's a watch list. And my experience is I've heard a lot of folks telling me we're on that watch list. So when we come in, we're searched more, we're pulled out of the line, and we're treated differently than other people. Why am I on the list, and how did I get on there? So DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has they call it the TRIP program. They've got a way that you can petition to find out to get off if you're on. So there is a way to do that. I've heard different accounts as to whether this is effective or not. So I think we need to make it more effective. And I'd like to help do that if I can.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that there's a process, because I know many individuals were on the no-fly list, and with the Patriot Act and all
Yeah.
that other fun stuff, there was no way to find out why, or whether
Right.
it was just flagged for a reason, and a lot of people had different names. I remember a few years ago there's a little boy. And it was during the Iraq war, and there was a little boy. His name was actually, I don't know why his parents would have named him this, but his name was Saddam Hussein. But he
Okay.
was 7, 8 months old.
Yes.
And every time, and the dad would fly quite a bit, and every time they would fly, they would get
Right, so that
stopped. And
that
I was
is
like,
a-
how do you
yeah.
get this little kid off the no-fly
Right.
list?
That is a serious problem, and that's not the only case like that.
Right.
Names that are similar, if you have the same
They're flagged.
name.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So as technology evolves, I hope that we can move into another process. In some airports, it's facial recognition,
Right.
where you look, or scans, or fingerprints, or whatever. Well, let's do more than just the names. Let's find out this 7-year-old boy, who that person really is, and maybe technology hasn't caught up to
And
where we
birth
are.
dates. So yeah,
Yes.
it makes sense,
Yeah.
common sense, to look at that and go back and forth. But sometimes technology can be an enemy. Because of the technology, it's hard to
Well,
change things.
Yeah,
so.
and we've had a lot of debates over facial recognition. There's a lot
Huge
of civil
debates.
liberty activists who are concerned about that.
Against it completely.
Right, exactly. I mean, from our perspective, we use it to catch murderers. I mean, that's what we've been doing in Detroit. We use that technology and match it up against 100 people who kind of look like that, and find out, was that person there at the scene of the crime? And only bring the case if it's really merited, without making sure that you're not getting the wrong person just because they look alike. But we've used it in those types of cases. It's important that it's not abused. I know
Certainly.
it's been abused in other countries. We don't want to turn out like that.
I just had this conversation early. Technology is wonderful, but too much of a good thing can be really bad.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got about 1 more minute.
Sure.
Is there a message that you want to give to everyone out there that just in terms of what we're dealing with on a national level, on a local level, and just some words of encouragement in regards to your office and your position?
So, look, we really want to, in the Justice Department locally, we want to keep people safe and help them. I have heard so many times about somebody saying, we need to stop the hateful rhetoric in Washington. And that person then launches into a hateful rhetoric tirade.
Oxymorons.
Right, exactly.
A lot of them out there.
I've just seen it so many times. And look, I keep my profile quieter, but yet I still have all the authority of the U.S. government and the Justice Department. I feel strongly that my mission is to help and to keep people safe. And I want people to feel comfortable with us. We're not going to get there 100%. I know it's not going to work, but the more people that can come to Bridges, the more people that can interact, the more people that can meet us, the better. And so I appreciate you having me on your show.
Absolutely.
So that I can get to know the community a little bit better.
Well, we're fortunate to have you, and you like I said, hit the ground running, and you have a lot of challenges.
Yes.
But you're facing them head on, and we definitely appreciate
Thank
that
you.
as a community and as a state. I think I can speak with them
I hope so.
on behalf of everyone. So thank you,
Thank you so
much. U.S.
Thank
Attorney Matthew Schneider. Candid conversation today. Be safe out there. No one has a ticket, a free ticket for hate or negativity or violence. We need to come together as a community, as a country, as true Americans, looking for that peaceful life that we all know, and making sure that we keep each other safe. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on Off the Cuff.